Story 1. The Pharaoh's Tomb. My grandfather was an archaeologist, a man who dedicated his life to unearthing the secrets of ancient Egypt. He often spoke of the thrill of discovery, the dust and heat of the desert, and the whispers of history. But there was one expedition he rarely mentioned, one that left a permanent shadow in his eyes. The excavation of Pharaoh Amenhotep IV's tomb in the Valley of the Kings. It was 1922. A time when Egyptology was booming, and the world was captivated by tales of curses and mummies. My grandfather, a young, ambitious scholar, dismissed such superstitions as mere folklore. He was there for the science, for the history, for the glory of uncovering a lost civilization. The tomb itself was unlike any other. It was smaller, more austere, and strangely devoid of the usual opulent treasures. Instead, the walls were covered in intricate hieroglyphs, not depicting the pharaoh's life or journey to the afterlife, but a series of warnings, curses against those who dared disturb his eternal slumber. My grandfather, fluent in ancient Egyptian, translated them with a growing sense of unease. The curses spoke of a slow, agonizing decay, of madness, and of a spirit that would cling to the desecrator until their last breath. The local workers, already superstitious, refused to enter the burial chamber, their faces pale with fear. My grandfather and his team, however, pushed on, driven by scientific curiosity and the allure of a groundbreaking discovery. They found the sarcophagus, plain and unadorned, unlike the grandeur expected of a pharaoh. Inside, the mummy of Amenhotep IV lay, remarkably preserved, but with an expression of profound agony etched on its face. Around its neck was a single, obsidian amulet, pulsating with a faint, dark energy. My grandfather, despite the warnings, felt an irresistible urge to touch it. The moment his fingers brushed the cold stone, a sharp, searing pain shot through his arm, and a chilling whisper, ancient and malevolent, seemed to echo in his mind, a voice that promised eternal torment. He dismissed it as a hallucination, a trick of his overactive imagination, brought on by the oppressive heat and the eerie atmosphere of the tomb. But the curse, it seemed, had taken hold. Back in England, strange things began to happen. Members of the excavation team fell ill, one by one, with inexplicable ailments that baffled doctors. Some suffered from sudden violent fits of madness, their screams echoing through the sanitariums. My grandfather, initially unaffected, began to experience vivid, terrifying nightmares. He would wake up in a cold sweat, convinced he could hear the faint, guttural whispers of the pharaoh, demanding retribution. He started to see shadows moving in the periphery of his vision, too fast to be human, too fluid to be a trick of the light, reflected in the polished surfaces of his study. The air around him would often grow cold, even in the warmth of his home, and he would feel a strange, icy breath on his neck, even when no one was around. He tried to rationalize it, blaming the stress of the expedition, the lingering effects of the desert heat. But the evidence was mounting, a creeping dread that permeated every corner of his life. The final blow came years later. My grandfather, now a shadow of his former self, was found in his study, surrounded by his Egyptian artifacts. His face was contorted in a silent scream, his eyes wide and unblinking, fixed on an unseen horror. The obsidian amulet, which he had kept hidden, was clutched tightly in his hand, pulsating with a faint, dark glow. The doctors called it a heart attack, but I knew better. I had seen the fear in his eyes, heard the whispers in his sleep. The curse of Amenhotep IV had claimed another victim. The tomb, now resealed, remains undisturbed, a silent testament to the power of ancient warnings. But sometimes, late at night, if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers echoing from the depths of the earth. A chilling reminder that some secrets are best left buried. Story 2. The Cursed Relic of the Aztecs. My aunt, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, was a brilliant anthropologist, specializing in pre-Columbian civilizations. Her passion led her to the remote jungles of Mexico, where she sought to uncover the mysteries of the Aztec Empire. She was a woman of science, a skeptic who scoffed at local legends of ancient gods and vengeful spirits. Her latest expedition, in 2010, focused on a newly discovered temple complex, rumored to house a relic of immense power, a ceremonial dagger said to be imbued with the spirit of a forgotten Aztec deity. The local guides, their faces etched with fear, warned her against disturbing the site, speaking of a curse that would befall anyone who desecrated the sacred grounds. Alina, however, dismissed their warnings as primitive superstition. Eager to make a groundbreaking discovery, they found the dagger deep within the temple, in a hidden chamber, surrounded by skeletal remains and intricate carvings depicting gruesome sacrifices. It was a beautiful obsidian blade, its hilt adorned with jade and gold, and it seemed to hum with a faint, almost imperceptible energy. As Alina reached for it, one of the guides cried out, a desperate plea to leave it untouched. But Alina, driven by academic ambition, ignored him. The moment her fingers closed around the cold hilt, a sharp, searing pain shot through her arm, and a chilling whisper, ancient and malevolent, seemed to echo in her mind, a voice that promised eternal torment. She dismissed it as a hallucination, a trick of her overactive imagination, brought on by the oppressive heat and the eerie atmosphere of the temple. But the curse, it seemed, had taken hold. Back in the university, strange things began to happen. Members of her research team fell ill, one by one, with inexplicable ailments that baffled doctors. Some suffered from sudden, violent fits of madness, their screams echoing through the university halls. Alina, initially unaffected, began to experience vivid, terrifying nightmares. She would wake up in a cold sweat, convinced she could hear the faint guttural whispers of the Aztec deity, demanding retribution. She started to see shadows moving in the periphery of her vision, too fast to be human, too fluid to be a trick of the light. Reflected in the polished surfaces of her office, the air around her would often grow cold, even in the warmth of her home, and she would feel a strange, icy breath on her neck, even when no one was around. She tried to rationalize it, blaming the stress of the expedition, the lingering effects of the jungle heat. But the evidence was mounting, a creeping dread that permeated every corner of her life. The final blow came months later. Alina, now a shadow of her former self, was found in her office, surrounded by her Aztec artifacts. Her face was contorted in a silent scream, her eyes wide and unblinking, fixed on an unseen horror. The obsidian dagger, which she had kept hidden, was clutched tightly in her hand, pulsating with a faint, dark glow. The doctors called it a heart attack, but I knew better. I had seen the fear in her eyes, heard the whispers in her sleep. The curse of the Aztec deity had claimed another victim. The temple, now resealed, remains undisturbed, a silent testament to the power of ancient warnings. But sometimes, late at night, if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers, echoing from the depths of the jungle, a chilling reminder that some secrets are best left buried. Story 3. The Mummy's Bracelet. My grandmother, a renowned historian, had a fascination with ancient Egypt, particularly its lesser-known dynasties. She wasn't an archaeologist, but her research often led her to obscure texts and forgotten artifacts. In 1978, she acquired a unique piece from a private collector, a simple, gold bracelet, intricately carved with hieroglyphs, said to have belonged to a minor queen from the 18th dynasty. The collector, a nervous, elderly man, had practically begged her to take it, speaking of strange occurrences and unsettling dreams since it came into his possession. My grandmother, ever the pragmatist, dismissed his fears as the ramblings of an old man. She saw only a beautiful piece of history, a tangible link to a bygone era. She began to wear the bracelet constantly, admiring its craftsmanship. At first, nothing seemed amiss, but then, subtle changes began to manifest. She started to experience vivid, unsettling dreams, not nightmares, but dreams filled with ancient Egyptian imagery, sprawling temples, sun-drenched deserts, and the faces of long-dead pharaohs. She would wake up feeling strangely refreshed, yet also profoundly disoriented, as if she had traveled to another time. Her colleagues noticed a change in her demeanor. She became more withdrawn, more focused on her research, often muttering to herself in what sounded like ancient Egyptian. She dismissed their concerns, attributing it to her intense dedication to her work. Then, the physical changes began. Her skin, once vibrant, grew unnaturally pale, almost translucent. Her eyes, usually bright and inquisitive, took on a distant, almost vacant stare. She started to lose weight, despite eating normally, and a faint, sweet, decaying smell, like old linen and dust, began to emanate from her, subtle but distinct. She also developed an aversion to sunlight, preferring to work in dimly lit rooms, drawing the curtains even during the day. Her family grew increasingly concerned, urging her to see a doctor, but she refused, insisting she was fine, just a little tired. One evening I visited her at her home. The house was dark, the air heavy and still. I found her in her study, hunched over ancient texts, the gold bracelet gleaming on her wrist. Her back was to me, and she was muttering, a low guttural sound that sent a shiver down my spine. As I approached, I noticed something else. Her hair, once a vibrant silver, had turned a dull, lifeless gray, and seemed to be thinning rapidly. Her hands, resting on the parchment, were thin and bony, the veins unnaturally prominent. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice barely audible. She didn't respond. I reached out to touch her shoulder, and as my fingers brushed her skin, it felt cold, like marble. And then, she slowly, agonizingly, turned her head. Her face was a mask of horror, her eyes wide and unblinking, fixed on an unseen point beyond me. Her lips were drawn back in a silent scream, revealing teeth that seemed unnaturally long and sharp. The sweet, decaying smell was overwhelming, making my stomach churn. The gold bracelet on her wrist pulsed with a faint, dark glow. I screamed. I didn't stop to think. I just ran out of the house, not caring about the darkness or the cold. I didn't stop until I was back in my car, shaking uncontrollably. I called the police. They found her in her study, exactly as I had left her. The doctors called it a sudden, massive heart attack, but I knew better. The gold bracelet was gone, vanished without a trace. The house was cleared, the artifacts donated to a museum. But sometimes, late at night, if you listen closely, you can still hear the faint, guttural whispers, echoing from the depths of ancient tombs, a chilling reminder that some relics are best left undisturbed. And I wonder, what was the true cost of that bracelet? And what did it want? Story 4. The Whispering Scroll. My uncle, a passionate but somewhat reckless collector of rare books and manuscripts, once acquired a scroll from a shadowy dealer in a dusty back alley of Cairo. It was said to be an ancient text, predating even the earliest known Egyptian dynasties, written in a language no longer understood by man. The dealer, a man with eyes that seemed to hold too many secrets, had warned my uncle of its power, of the whispers it carried, and of the madness it could inflict upon those who sought to decipher its secrets. My uncle, a man who thrived on the thrill of the forbidden, dismissed the warnings as a sales tactic, a way to inflate the price of an otherwise unremarkable piece of parchment. He saw only the allure of the unknown, the potential for a groundbreaking discovery that would cement his legacy in the world of antiquities. He brought the scroll back to his study, a room already overflowing with forgotten histories and arcane knowledge. He spent countless hours poring over the delicate parchment, trying to decipher its strange symbols and intricate drawings. At first, nothing seemed amiss, but then he began to hear it. A faint whispering, like dry leaves rustling in a forgotten corner, or the distant murmur of a dying breath. It seemed to emanate from the scroll itself, a low, sibilant murmur that seemed to slither through the air. He attributed it to the wind, or perhaps the echoes of his own thoughts. But the whispers grew more frequent, more deliberate, and always seemed to come from just beyond the edge of his hearing, from the darkest corners of his study. As the weeks passed, the whispers escalated. They became more coherent, more distinct. He started to pick out words, phrases. They were in different languages. Some he recognized, some he didn't. They spoke of forgotten rituals, of ancient gods, and of a power that lay dormant, waiting to be awakened. The air in his study grew heavy, oppressive. The lights would flicker. The old books on his shelves would groan and shudder, and the faint smell of old paper would be replaced by something else, something metallic and rotten, like blood. He started avoiding social gatherings, making excuses to stay in his study, but the whispers seemed to follow him, echoing in his mind, seeping into his thoughts. He was on edge, his nerves frayed, but he refused to speak about it openly. It was an unspoken terror, a shared secret that bound him to the scroll. One evening, I visited him at his home. The house was dark, the air heavy and still. I found him in his study, hunched over the scroll, his face pale and gaunt. His back was to me, and he was muttering, a low, guttural sound that sent a shiver down my spine. As I approached, I noticed something else. His hands, resting on the parchment, were covered in faint, dark lines, like intricate, swirling tattoos. But they weren't tattoos. They looked like veins, unnaturally prominent and black. And his fingernails were long, yellowed, and slightly curved, like talons. "Uncle," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He didn't respond. I reached out to touch his shoulder, and as my fingers brushed his skin, it felt cold, like marble. And then, he slowly, agonizingly, turned his head. His face was a mask of horror, his eyes wide and unblinking, fixed on an unseen point beyond me. His lips were drawn back in a silent scream, revealing teeth that seemed unnaturally long and sharp. The metallic sweet smell was overwhelming, making my stomach churn. The scroll on his desk pulsed with a faint, dark glow. I screamed. I didn't stop to think. I just ran out of the house, not caring about the darkness or the cold. I didn't stop until I was back in my car, shaking uncontrollably. I called the police. They found him in his study, exactly as I had left him. The doctors called it a sudden, massive heart attack, but I knew better. The scroll was gone, vanished without a trace. The house was cleared, the remaining artifacts donated to a museum. But sometimes, late at night, if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers, echoing from the depths of forgotten civilizations, a chilling reminder that some knowledge is best left undisturbed. And I wonder, what was the true cost of that scroll, and what did it want?